Hello everyone, how y'all doing? So I kind of just want to ramble today because I don't know if it's just me, but like I feel like recently there's been more and more. Yeah, I'm skipping this fucking cutscene. I feel like I've been seeing more and more, advocacy for Linux in general. Like I remember like when I first switched to Linux back in it would have been 2022. I guess at this point it's been 4 years. But like I remember back then when I switched to Linux, like a lot of people were still fucking traumatized by the whole my experience using Linux by Linus Tech Tips, and people were like, God damn, this shit's wacky. You know what I mean? But like nowadays, I remember I was watching a video from oh, okay, so I can just do this. I feel like I've done this mission before. But anyway, like I was watching a video from J2 Sense, and it was a video where it was talking about how you can disable a lot of the telemetry, which I'm going to be completely honest with you. Like, I'm glad he made that video because I think people should be informed of all of that. But I genuinely don't think a lot of it matters because at the end of the day, Microsoft is just gonna end up disabling a lot of that stuff anyway on the next update. And even then, like, I don't know to what extent I would even trust those settings are even effective anyway, because like at the end of the day, are you really gonna trust what a closed source operating system is telling you? Like, do you really trust a operating system that you don't have access to the source code? If it tells you that it's not spying on you, are you really just going to believe it? I don't know. I personally, you know, oh wait, that's the wrong button. How do I dodge? I think it's, oh, it's R1. Okay. Like, are you really going to believe Microsoft when they say that those settings actually work for disabling it? Because the only reason I can think of for why I would believe that would be just simply due to the fact that Microsoft also sells their operating system to enterprises, and they probably wouldn't want to lie about something as integral as privacy, which is one of the things that companies really want. They don't want to fucking use an operating system in which the vendor is spying on them all the time. And so that's the only reason I can think of for why you maybe would trust. But even then, I don't know if I trust them that hard. But anyway, regardless of the case, I was reading the comments there, and a lot of them were really funny. Like, the funniest comment I saw was someone saying, it said something like, you're teaching how to install Linux wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it was basically just a, wait, did I come from here? I don't remember seeing all that stuff. Yeah, I came, yeah, I was just here. Okay, so let's just go there. So yeah, I just thought that was funny, and I saw a lot of comments like that. They were like, yeah, I already found out my solution for disabling telemetry. It's just using Linux. And I'm really glad. I'm glad that we're seeing more of that. Do I have to, hang on. Oh, so I can target that? Oh, what does that actually, oh, okay, okay. I wasn't sure exactly what the fuck that was supposed to do, but good. But, well, now what the fuck does that do? Well, there's only one way to figure it out. And she died. There's only one way to figure it out, so. I don't get it, nothing happened. Oh, wait, something did happen. I'm seeing more, okay, that's great. And so, yeah, I feel like nowadays I'm seeing a lot more people just kind of pose this idea that maybe it's just time to switch to Linux. And honestly, I've also seen a lot of debates as far as whether or not 2026 might be the year of the Linux desktop, just because, you know, the reputation of Microsoft has been on an all-time low with all the AI stuff, which, I don't know. I haven't really been experiencing a lot of the frustration that people have been having, so I wouldn't be able to know how bad things are right now. But like, regardless, and then, you know, there's also the Steam machine, which honestly, with the whole RAM shortage thing, I'm not sure how much the Steam machine is actually gonna help with expanding the Linux market share, but hopefully the whole RAM shortages thing isn't gonna be too much of a problem. But I guess as someone who's been using Linux for a long time, I might as well just share my own perspective as far as whether or not I think it's good for people to switch to Linux. And to be honest with you, my answer for the most part is the same, which is it kind of depends on, firstly, what you use your computer for, but also what you actually, you know, what you value out of your computer. Because, look, as an example, if you're someone that doesn't play a lot of multiplayer games, if you're someone that doesn't use software like Adobe or whatever, and all these like crazy proprietary stuff that refuses to work on Linux, if you're someone that mostly uses your fucking web browser, and a lot of the like even Microsoft Office works on a web browser. Like if you're someone who's able to do a lot of your stuff through the web browser, which I would say that's kind of me. Like I use my computer, and I feel like I spend most of my time on the fucking web browser. And so if you're someone that fits this criteria, then in general, I don't think you're really gonna suffer from using Linux. But you do also have to question whether or not is it even worth it, because at the end of the day, you know, I for one, I think Linux is worth it, but I'm also someone who values open source software. Because look, at the end of the day, if you have your computer for work, and whether it's your company gave you the computer, as in they literally send out either a laptop or mini PC for you, in that case, you don't really have a choice. You have to use Windows. Like you can't just fucking install whatever operating system you want on a work computer. That's your business property. You can't really do whatever the fuck you want there. So you have no choice. But of course, there are some people that also might use their own personal computer for work. Like, I don't know, maybe certain animators or content creators and stuff like that. And in that case, you know, again, if you're using very specific software that only works on Windows and it's important for work, I'm not going to tell you to switch. Like, it doesn't really make sense. The most that I would maybe say is like maybe consider getting a computer only for work, because personally speaking, you know, I don't use my computer for work, and I don't think I would even want to use my computer for work, because I feel like I'd want to separate that from work, partially because of privacy, but also just because of my own mental stability. Like I don't want the computer that I use for fucking playing video games and having a lax day also be the same one that I'm using to work with other stuff. Like to me, it just doesn't really sit right with me. So personally speaking, I would probably just... Okay, I can do this. Great. Like, personally speaking, I would probably just get a different computer for work, and my personal one would continue being for Linux. Ooh, that's an interesting... Okay, hang on. So, if I hit here... Boom. What does it... Ooh, that's actually really cool. That's some nice platforming you got here, buddy. But yeah, in general, like I would probably build a different computer for work, but then again, not everyone would really want to do that. A lot of people would want to have one computer both for work and for leisure, and I respect that. And if you need Windows software, then I don't know, maybe dual boot. But if you don't want to do that, then yeah, I guess you have no choice but to just use Windows, and that's completely understandable. I'm gonna tell them, I'm gonna be upfront with them. It's like, yeah, okay, in that scenario, if there's some software like not DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere or something like that you need for work, then you know, continue using Windows. I can't really do much for you. Now, there is another group of people, which is I guess it's just the average person. Whether it's students or regular people or gamers or whatever, you know, just normal as fucking people. Those are the ones that I feel like they can much more easily get away with using Linux, but at the same time, you also can't necessarily justify to them why they should switch to Linux, because the truth is, like, I'm just being completely honest with you, I like Linux, but for the average user, there's not a ton of tangible advantages to using Linux over any other operating system. Like, to be honest with you, the only thing I can think of is just maybe the fact that Linux is just overall less demanding than other operating systems. And, you know, depending on which operating system you're using, like Windows, the update system might be a little bit less stressful. Oh, and I fucking fell. Like, the update system might be a little bit less stressful, which, at least for me, I've started to like value that a lot more, especially with like recent updates from Windows that have just been really fucking bad. But like, you know, aside from, and also just the fact that if you have a really old laptop or something like that, you may not even be able to use Windows 11, not just because it runs like shit, but also because of the whole TPM bullshit. And, and aside from that, I don't think there's a ton of benefits for the average person to use Linux. Aside from the fact that it gives you more control. Like Linux overall gives you more control over the operating system that you use because it's actually open source. It's not proprietary. It's not you do actually own the fucking software that you use on your computer. And I think, and that is something that I personally value, but I don't think that's something that most people value. I think most people don't really care if the operating system they're using is, technically speaking, owned by them or not. Like, are you gonna convince, for example, the average person that uses like a fucking iPhone or whatever that they should use Linux when they or at least for the past couple of years, they've been completely fine with using a mobile phone that only lets them install apps that they approved? Am I really gonna convince those people to use Linux? I don't know. Like, the truth is, I don't think most people care about open source software, and it's kind of, it's kind of unfortunate to say this, but it is true. Like, I don't think most people do, and to those people, like, I can try to convince them that it's worth it, but if it's not, like, if it's not something that they're gonna value all that much, then like I don't think there's really a point in trying to convince them. And so I guess the real battle right now is just going to be, how can I convince people that it's good to have open source software? Well, for the most part, you do this through explaining, computer sovereignty and being able to own your computer and how that's becoming more and more of a big deal. The fact that nowadays with companies like Microsoft and stuff like that, integrating shit like fucking Copilot and harvesting that data for their own like training models and stuff like that, just making people generally, I got an S tier even though I fell, all right. Like, just making people more aware of the fact that a lot of these big tech companies are and I think nowadays people are even more understanding of that, just because now it's not just that the software is trying to control you, but also you're also being stripped away the actual piece of hardware, just because things are becoming prohibitively expensive, and now people are trying to offer you options to rent the hardware instead of actually owning it. Like, I think people are becoming more aware of that, and I think over time people might end up becoming more understanding of what it actually means to own the computers that you buy. But then again, by the time people realize that, it might not even be possible to buy hardware anymore. So that is also something to consider. It's very sad, to be honest. Like, this is just overall a very fucking sad state of affairs. But in general, it doesn't matter. I still think it's important for people to be aware. And yeah, and in that case, yes, I think you should switch to Linux in that scenario. But to be honest with you, at least right now, I am getting the impression that the main reason people are switching to Linux is just because they're kind of annoyed by Microsoft, and they feel like promoting Linux is going to make, what did I unlock? Ryzen Dragon, performing advanced light attack, mid-air. Oh, okay, that's great. But yeah, I think right now people are just kind of supporting Linux with the expectation that Microsoft is going to improve. It's basically the whole AMD thing, where people that want AMD to succeed, they don't actually want AMD to succeed. They just want Nvidia to be afraid of AMD succeeding. They themselves are probably not even buying AMD hardware. The same people that are telling other people to buy AMD hardware, they probably don't even have AMD hardware. They just want their Nvidia hardware to be cheaper. I think it's kind of the same thing with what's happening with Linux. And at the end of the day, if that's the main reason people are supporting Linux, then I don't think this is sustainable, because at the end of the day, it should be more than just I want the competition to be better, because at the end of the day, Linux is not a commercial operating system. Linux will never be a commercial operating system. It's an entire open source project. And so at the end of the day, this isn't really going to be directly competing with Linux. And I don't even think Microsoft sees Linux as a competitor. I mean, they literally use Linux for Microsoft Azure, and they probably use it for hosting other servers. It's just, Like Linux, I don't think it's ever gonna be a like competitor. And the same thing is true for SteamOS. Like I don't think SteamOS is once or will ever be a competitor to Windows, because Valve is not in the industry of building an entire. What the hell is this costume? Wait a minute. Oh wait, this is a completely different character. I remember. The thing is, I've actually played this game on my PS5, and so what I'm doing right now is mostly just kind of replaying some of the missions that I'd already done before. But yeah, like in general, what was I saying? Oh wait, I think I remember this character being a fucking pain in the ass to beat. This might be annoying actually, but anyway, what was I saying again? Oh yeah, like SteamOS is not going to be a competitor to Windows because Valve is not really in the industry of building an OS. Like they're not even really building an operating system from scratch. They're using an existing operating system, creating an immutable file system, bundling in a bunch of SteamOS stuff, and just contributing it to the extent that they can, and that's about it. Like that's really the extent. Like I don't even think Valve cares if you use Windows or SteamOS. They only care if you're buying games on Steam. Like that's the only thing they fucking care. Like I mean, I think they are concerned about Microsoft. I think especially now with like what do they call it? I think it's Xbox Magnus. When you're dealing with a speedy enemy like Kenshin, you'll have trouble moving the camera around to keep up. Lock onto the enemy and don't let them out of sight. Oh, yeah, oh no. I might need to beat this character off screen because I'm probably gonna have to lock in. But yeah, as I was saying, like, oh, I actually dodged pretty well. Bop, 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 bop. I might not have as much trouble as I thought. Boom. But yeah, like, I think Valve is concerned with Microsoft, but I think their concern is mostly that, again, especially with Xbox Magnus, which, from what I can tell, I think their intent is to... And my health just went kaboom. Yeah, I'm gonna have to lock in this. I might lose a couple of times while I'm recording this video because I'm probably gonna have to do this mission off screen. But like, yeah, in general, like I think, especially with Xbox Magnus, if it is true that Microsoft does kind of intend the next generation of Xbox to be more like PC, I think they're going to put more effort into improving the PC gaming experience, which I think is a good thing in general. Like, I don't know if it's the best decision to make because, like, I don't know how much of this is gonna affect people that might have built their catalog of Xbox games on other Xbox consoles. I don't know how much they're gonna get affected by it. But regardless, I think it may end up improving the ecosystem. But then again, they did recently announce that they fired Phil Spencer, and apparently the CEO that they hired is someone who's like very deep into like AI, and so I don't know. Oh my god, I don't know if I'm super hopeful to the future of Xbox, but we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, I can see the PC gaming experience improving, and I think what Valve would mainly be concerned is whether or not these attempts could end up resulting in, for example, Microsoft expanding the Microsoft Store ecosystem and creating even more dependencies, and maybe even start making certain deals with people, and then maybe it may even get to a point where the more they start to garner, you know, players to migrate to the Microsoft Store, they may end up making the Steam experience deliberately worse over time. And once they do that, there are going to be less people to complain about because they already have a set of people that already are integrated into the Microsoft Store. I think that's mainly what Valve is concerned. I don't think Valve cares to make an operating system that will beat the fuck out of Windows. They don't care. Like, they only care that people stay on Steam. And so that's what I mean when I say I don't think they're in the business of developing an operating system. I don't think they really care too much. And so I think that if you're supporting Linux with the expectation that Microsoft is going to get better, I don't know how much I would put faith on that, if I'm being completely honest. Like, you can do that if you want, And by the way, I just realized this character is actually pretty easy to beat because it literally shows like a little bit of spark before the attack. And so, yeah, actually, you know what? Fuck it. Let's lock in. Like, fuck talking about Linux. Linux doesn't matter. We're gonna fucking beat the hell out. We gotta beat the hell out of this character. Boom. There you go. Die. Die. You fucking demon. Die. Die. So her regular attacks, they do a pretty big amount of damage, but not as much as her charge attacks. Her charge attacks tend to do even more damage, but it doesn't matter. She's gonna die. She's definitely gonna die. Wait, what the fuck? I think I was way too close in on her. God damn it. Okay, I need to be more careful. I think cornering her might not be a good idea because it'll actually make it harder for me to escape some of her mid-range attacks, which I can still be pretty vulnerable to. So, all right, spark. There you go. And then I counterattack. And by the way, I think I can do this, but it might not be too effective against it's much more effective against fodder characters, but not against boss. Actually, even some bosses might still be effective to launch her to the air, but I don't think she's actually gonna be able to launch it. That was a good dodge. That was a really fucking good dodge. All right. That's great. Do not corner her. It's not a good idea. Okay. Oh, wrong button. Oh, fuck. I clicked the wrong button. I actually was supposed to click L2. Look. Wait, where is she? Oh, wait, how the fuck did... How did she lose the lock? Suddenly she just... Oh, was it because I was launching... I think it was because of the grenade. That makes sense. It might have... the lock-in was probably disabled. Boom! Dodge. Fuck you, you motherfucking demon. You're not nearly as hard as you used to be. What the fuck? Again, I need to stop cornering her. Because if I do that, it's gonna be a fucking problem. And... Alright. Boom. Ba 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 ba. There. Kenshin fucking died. That's right, I beat her. Granted, if I had slightly less health, I would have died there and I would have had to restart. But what was S rank? Fuck yeah! I'm a demon. All right. Yeah. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Linux. Well, here's the funny thing. I'm gaming. Oh wait, wrong screen. Let's go here. I'm gaming this on Linux, so I'm saying a lot of this with much love for Linux, and so I'm just saying that, like, at the end of the day, I'm very happy to see people interested in Linux, and I think Linux is going to continue to grow. It's gonna get better, and I'm gonna continue to, you know, share some of the some of the things that you get out of using Linux. For example, you know, I've made certain videos where I talked about the AMD and also the NVIDIA experience, and I'll say one thing though, like, generally speaking, if you're building a new computer, I think you have much more opportunities to build the perfect PC for Linux. In fact, there are even some companies that dedicate their entire business actually building PCs specifically for Linux, and so I think you have a lot of chances to make sure you get the best experience. And like, I definitely would recommend you get I would certainly recommend you get an AMD card if you want the best Linux experience. Not to say that it's unusable with other vendors, I just think in general, it's just less stressful with AMD. With NVIDIA, I think it's becoming less stressful. And I would also say that if you're on like newer generations, like especially after Turin, I think your experience using Linux is probably not going to be all that problematic. If you have an older generation though, I honestly I would either recommend you get a different card or honestly just don't. I don't know. I'm not sure if I would even really recommend that you use Linux just because, especially recently, because I think Nvidia's was it like the kernel module or something like that, but they dropped support for like older generations. Like if you have like GTX cards, like they basically drop support for that, and so to be able to use your card there, you kind of have to rely on the distribution that you're using, maintaining support for some of the legacy drivers from now on, because Nvidia is not gonna fucking bother supporting those older cards, and so meanwhile with AMD, you don't really have to worry about a lot of that stuff. In fact, recently I've actually been seeing updates for like cards from like 20 fucking 13 or shit, like 2012, 2011, something like that. There's a specific generation, I think is it CGN, am I saying it correctly? I think it's like CGN or something like that. I might be wrong, I might be saying it incorrectly, but yeah, really old cards that used to rely on like a very specific they used to rely on really specific drivers, because the newer ones like AMD GPU and RADV didn't really properly work with those older gen cards. But like nowadays, granted, a lot of this wasn't really AMD, it was actually Valve, but regardless, like there's been a lot of work being done to make these newer drivers like AMD GPU for the general graphics driver and RADV for the Vulkan driver to actually work with a lot of those older cards, and now they're actually performing better than they used to be. And so this is what I mean when I say that like your experience is just going to be less stressful. It's not even that I'm fucking simping for AMD or anything like that. I don't care. Like these are billion-dollar companies. They have their own fucking marketing teams. They don't need me to tell you what fucking card to use or not. I'm just simply telling you what my experience and what I've observed has been, and I just think that in general your experience is just way less stressful if you use an AMD card. But of course, if you're someone that already has a built PC and you started off with Nvidia, then the most that I can really wish is that you're not using a really old Nvidia card and you're using a modern one. And even then, it's not like you're gonna have the best experience. You're still gonna find some annoyances here and there, and again, it's getting a lot better, but you know, let's just say I would not feel as confident telling someone that owns like a fucking, I don't know, a 4070 or something like that to switch to Linux as I do to someone who's using a 6700 XT or something like that. I wouldn't feel as confident, and it's not because, again, it's not that I think your experience is gonna fucking suck, but what I would say is that the experience that I'm getting on my computer is not gonna be the same as the experience you're gonna get, because can use shit like adaptive sync and HDR and Wayland and all of these fucking features mostly pretty fine without really having to stress a lot about it. But if you're on Nvidia, you may have a whole set of stresses that you have to deal with that I'm not really prepared to take in. You know, I'm not really prepared to like tell you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what are some of the workarounds, and whether or not it's even really all that worth it. Because again, you're gonna get a much different experience than what I'm having right now, and so you know that is also something to consider. But even then, I do know a lot of people that use Linux on a daily basis. They've been using Nvidia graphics for years, and they still think it's worth it. And so, you know, and to be fair, there are some advantages to using Nvidia over AMD with some applications like DaVinci Resolve, as well as the fact that you don't have to rely on VAPI for the hardware encoder. I think NVENC actually works pretty much normally, like, because it's not really the case with AMD, because like AMF doesn't. Well, to be fair, I think there may have been some patches to add some like AMF support on VAPI, so that might have changed since then. But like, yeah, in general, you know, there can be some advantages to using Nvidia. But like, for example, like let's say you were someone that bought like a 40 series card back when it came out, and Nvidia was advertising shit like fucking frame generation and ray reconstruction and stuff like that. A lot of that just didn't work out of the box on Linux. eventually they did get support. Well, I don't know if ray reconstruction works on Linux, but I know that frame generation eventually got support. But like, imagine you're someone who's buying, you know, GPUs with the expectation that you're getting a lot of these features, only to then not be able to use it on Linux, if that makes any sense. Like, granted, not that I think that frame generation is enough of a fucking good reason to buy a GPU anyway, but still, like, if you're someone who's put in that position, like, you do have to really consider whether or not you want to use Linux if your intent is to use the absolute bleeding edge technologies that Nvidia has to offer, which some of them might not work out of the box on Linux. Thankfully, with DLSS 4, I think it did work out of the box on Linux. That was actually really good. That was a cool thing. I think it did work, if I'm not mistaken. But, or at least I hope it worked. I hope it worked. I think it does. If I'm not mistaken, I think it does. But yeah, like you don't always know if Nvidia might release something that just doesn't work out of the box on Linux, because historically that has always been the case. Even shit like DLSS didn't initially work out of the box on Linux, and granted, that was a different period. This was a different time, and Nvidia was less interested in Linux than they are now. So things might have changed since then, but you know, just take that into account as well. Honestly, I guess to me, a better question I also do have is whether or not I think the Steam Machine might actually push some developers to enable support for Linux in the future. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think that's going to largely depend on how successful the Steam Machine is, which again, with the whole RAM shortage thing, that might be a bit harder to tell. But hopefully this can be a good opportunity, because at the end of the day, I don't think developers are going to enable Linux, enable Linux support for a lot of their anti-cheat software, just because with Linux, specifically through Proton, they just don't have the same access to, they don't have the same like root ring 0 access to your computer as they do on Windows, which is kind of funny to think about. And the user has more control over a lot of those privileges than the game developers has, and so that sort of conflict, it's basically a conflict over control for your computer, which is why I really don't think these kernel anti-cheats are going to work on Linux purely based on the kindness of the developers, because at the end of the day, they want to control your computer. That's essentially it. They want to control. And look, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to fucking villainize them. I know they're doing it because they're trying to stop cheating because, you know, they have to be as invasive as the cheaters in order to protect you. I get it. I get the logic. I'm not trying to fucking... I'm not trying to paint them in a bad light. But at the end of the day, that is essentially what it is. It's a fight over who controls your computer. That is essentially what it is. And I just feel like with Linux, the user is always going to win. And that's why developers don't usually want to enable their anti-cheat on Linux. But maybe with the Steam Machine, this might change things, because it might actually put them in a position where they really have to reconsider how they go about approaching this whole anti-cheat problem. Maybe they might need to rely more on server-sided anti-cheat. Maybe they might have to make a few exceptions as far as like the invasiveness of the anti-cheat for certain hardware, which I think they kind of already do that with Mac anyway. And so, you know, things could change, but I'm not sure. But yeah, anyway, I think that's really all I have to share. I hope this video did something to you, because for me, I was mostly just kind of rambling for the sake of it and sharing some of the thoughts I've had for you for a couple of months. And yeah, I think that's all.